Hello, everybody, and welcome to Starting Small Music. I'm Justin McCormick, and you're about to hear a conversation with an artist, musician, and music industry professional on their journey and how they got to where they are today. At Starting Small, we like to take you on a journey uncovering the untold stories of your favorite songs and artists. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Just keep a smile on your face and it'll be okay. Try not to be bitter, you gotta do it either way. Keep a smile on your face and it'll be okay. So when life throws a jab, you gotta duck out of the way.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Starting Small Music Podcast. Today we have Tim Rencken, utility musician for Riley Green. How you doing today, Tim?
I'm doing great, Justin. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. So getting right into your story, where did you grow up and what was your childhood like?
So I grew up in a small town in New Hampshire, first in a little town called Brookline for about 12 years, and then I moved to Hollis, New Hampshire for 6 years. Wasn't really a huge move because the two towns actually share middle schools and high schools. So growing up there, it things were a little slow, but it was a great place to grow up. Spent a lot of time on sports teams. Music actually wasn't really a big part of my life until later. Around fifth grade or so is when I first got into music. But it was just kind of a small, quiet, good place to be.
For sure. Now, growing up maybe around the house, who were some of the first artists or records you remember consuming that kind of made you feel like a push towards music?
So thinking back to like early childhood, the only artists that I really remember were like Michael Jackson and Fleetwood Mac. My parents would play a lot of their records. It felt like anytime we were in the car, one of those artists was playing. And so those were kind of my earliest memories of music. Then, when I got a little bit older, fifth or sixth grade, I think when people usually start kind of developing their own musical interests apart from whatever their parents are listening to, got into a lot of metal. Disturbed was actually the first band that I went and saw in concert, along with Kill Switch Engage, and then I got into Slipknot and some bands like that over time. And when I started my first band, we were playing metal. So that's kind of the early days of music.
Now, what was the first instrument you picked up then?
It was the saxophone.
Saxophone.
So in fifth grade, my mom signed me up for the school band, and up at that point, I really had no interest in playing music. Wasn't even something I thought about, and I, by the time I got to where I could actually make some sound with the instrument instead of just like horrible screeching noises,
Yeah.
I was like, hey, this is pretty cool. I can actually play some songs and like recognizable stuff. Like, this is all right. Then the next year I started playing trumpet as well, and kept going through the middle school band. And then in eighth grade is when I picked up the guitar.
So how do you think kind of starting off like on a saxophone or how do you think that helped your guitar playing, kind of just like learning like the scales on another instrument? Do you think that helped at all?
Definitely. I mean, when you bring in the guitar, there's definitely the whole new concept of coordinating the fretboard and the pick and everything like that. But I at least had the background of, like you said, playing a scale, familiarizing myself with music, and I could actually read sheet music, which was incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
I played guitar in the jazz band in high school, and it was always kind of the stereotype that the guitar players couldn't read music. And compared to the horn players, by the time I got to high school, my sight reading abilities were nothing like theirs. But I, at least I had that start with the saxophone and the familiarity with the sheet music that I could keep up as a guitar player.
Now, getting into high school, you said you were in a metal band. Do you remember the name of this band?
Yes, it was called A Hurricane Low.
Hurricane.
Um, I don't know what it means. Our our vocalist was just like, "Hey, this is our name." We're like, "All right, sure, that works." And if you really dig deep on YouTube, there are still some videos of it, and it's. I'm just gonna be honest, it's not great, but I'm glad that those videos are still up there, because it's every now and then kind of entertaining to go back and watch and just kind of see what the first gigging band was like.
Were you guys doing originals or some covers?
That band, I believe, was entirely originals.
Wow.
So it was really like a metalcore, or maybe a post-hardcore would be the right classification for it. I never really know exactly how to classify metal bands by genre. It was heavily inspired by like August Burns Red, A Day to Remember, The Devil Wears Prada, those bands that were kind of in that, I guess, 2008, 2010, 11 era.
No, did you have anything to like? Were you in the writing process at all, or was your like lead singer kind of bringing in the songs and then you would all just do your own parts?
We would typically, I think, with the other guitar player, would usually just be like, "Hey, I got this riff," and he would just start playing something, and then we would just fill in the rest of it. Usually, every song had at least one or two breakdowns. Just chugging the open strings, and the drummer would just like smash the china cymbal, and it would go like that, and then the vocalist would bring in the screams and all of that stuff.
Heck yeah. So take me back to senior year of high school. What are you thinking the plan is coming out? Are you wanting to already go to Nashville to do music? What were you thinking the plan was going to be for the next step?
Sure. So I, around that time in my life, had a kind of a big shift in what I thought I was going to do. Um, Sports had been a really big part of my life growing up, and I was always on basketball and baseball teams. And for a while, I thought I was going to try to go to college and play baseball. And around junior senior year of high school, I had gotten into playing country guitar, and I started thinking that maybe Nashville was the place to go. And then I discovered that a degree in music business was a real thing, that existed, and I don't remember exactly when or why I came across that, but I remember just going to a computer and typing in like music business degree, and Belmont University is what came up first.
Mhm.
And I was like, hey, I've never heard of this place. It seems kind of cool. It's in Nashville, which seems like a great place to go to do music. And I just started looking into that and decided that this is where I'm going to go. I'm going to try to go to Belmont and do the music business program.
Now, what did those first couple months look like once you got to town? I mean, did you automatically like just feel at home like when you moved to Nashville, like surrounded by musicians?
It I wouldn't say I necessarily felt at home right away. It was just a completely different experience than what I was used to, in a really great way, because New Hampshire didn't really have much of a music scene at the time. I'm not sure what it's like now, but we had that club where we play metal, and then in high school we had a Mexican restaurant where we had like a little jazz quartet gig, and that was about it. That was the music scene that we knew about, and suddenly it was, here in Nashville, there's a venue everywhere, there's musicians everywhere. My floor in my dorm at Belmont has a musician in every room. It was just it was a cool experience, and it just at the time for me so unique to be able to connect with so many different people just through music.
Is there anyone you met during your time at Belmont that you still work with now, or is kind of doing the same thing you're doing, playing with people on the road?
Well, actually, there was one guy from my floor freshman year, who's out playing guitar on tour, and we run into him quite a bit. We've done quite a few shows together. It's always great to see him, and there are there are a lot of people from Belmont who I'm constantly running into. Um, Not quite as many as I would have expected when I first got there, but there are definitely people who are writing in town, or producing in various aspects, other aspects of the industry, and uh, at least I have many acquaintances that I still see all the time.
Now you have a pretty unique story. You don't hear a lot of musicians doing this. You end up leaving Belmont to go to law school at the University of Richmond. Tell me about like your decision to do that.
So right around the time that I was finishing up Belmont, I think it was my senior year, I auditioned for a country artist named William Michael Morgan,
Yeah.
and I didn't get the gig. But from that audition process, I ended up filling in with him a few times when they needed a steel player. And at the time, I was still pretty new to pedal steel, but it gave me a little bit of a inside look as to what touring was like, and I felt like this is pretty cool. And then after that, after those fill-in gigs, I didn't really get much work for a while, and kind of just ended up in like a what am I doing kind of a situation. And to basically to pay the bills after graduation, I got a regular old desk job, and I started working at the Postmates headquarters downtown.
Okay.
And from there, I just thought, maybe maybe the music industry isn't exactly what I should be doing, and I started looking into law school. And then I applied, and in about 2019, I moved up to Richmond to do that.
Yeah. And I saw that in your second year of law school is actually when you get to gig with Riley. How did you kind of get in contact with him, especially not even being in Nashville at that time?
Yeah, so it all goes back to the gigs you play and the connections that you make along the way. His band leader at the time, he and I had done a gig together, playing for this artist I met at Belmont. And it was actually kind of a funny story about how he got on the gig. There was originally another guitar player, and it just didn't work out. So we brought Jake in last minute, and he showed up. He did an awesome job. It was a good gig, and him and I stayed in contact. We started playing actually with Riley's bass player as well. The three of us and another drummer, we'd go up to Illinois and play gigs up there, with a local artist. And we had all stayed in contact. And even though I had moved, I guess when Riley decided he was going to hire a utility player, I was one of the people on Jake's list. And he reached out to me just on short notice, like, hey, we're looking to have someone this weekend, you available?
Mm-hmm.
And I was in the middle of a week of law school, and was just like, yeah, I'll get my stuff and put it in the car and drive on down to Nashville, and we'll see.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah.
tell me about what that grind was like. I mean, going to school all week. I'm sure you're probably having to listen to lectures on the way back to Nashville. Like, that was probably a pretty crazy time of life, I'm assuming.
It was, and it led to 2 years that were pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And like when I had moved up to Richmond, and I wasn't very active in the music industry at the time. And then when I got up there, I went to a couple shows, and I was like, it's the scene here is pretty cool. And I started playing with some friends up there. I started teaching a lot. And teaching music is really what got me back into trying to play it full time.
Mhm.
And then around, I think I said 2 years into law school, we were right towards the end of the semester. And it was also when COVID had really messed everything up. So we were just coming out of the whole lockdown phase, but the university was still allowing remote attendance. So that policy was fortunate for the situation with Riley, because once I played a couple of shows, it was kind of like, all right, see you next weekend. And the
Yeah.
weekend after that, like, see you next weekend. So I was driving back and forth between Nashville and Richmond, thankfully able to attend classes via Zoom. And it was crazy for sure.
Yeah.
But luckily it also happened right at the end of the semester. So then I was able to get the second year finished and then have a little bit of a break from school, doing a very non-traditional summer for a law student. Most people try to go, work at a government agency or work at a law firm, and instead I was touring with a country artist out of Nashville.
That's awesome. Now, you are the utility musician for Riley. For those that don't know, kind of tell our listeners what that goes into and everything you play.
Sure. So I think utility musician is just kind of a general blanket term for someone who plays multiple instruments during a show. In country, it's common to see a steel guitar player who might also play dobro, or maybe some banjo, or a fiddle player who's doing maybe some keys or mandolin. And there are all sorts of different combinations that you'll see. In our show, it's mostly steel guitar for me, but I do a couple songs on mandolin, one on dobro, one on keys. Occasionally, we get a little banjo. During one part of the show, we break out a keytar and do a little bit with that. And currently, I'm trying to learn fiddle, but that's a whole nother beast. It's a tough
Sure.
instrument.
Now, I love talking to people that play steel guitar because that's what got me into music. My grandpa played steel guitar my whole time growing up, and Buddy Emmons is from my hometown. Who's some of your people that are like your Mount Rushmore of steel guitarists?
Well, I think a lot of people would probably agree that Paul Franklin is one of the all-time greats of steel guitar.
Yeah.
So many of the parts that I've learned, because I started playing steel guitar during my sophomore year at Belmont. So I was 20 and didn't really know anything about it. I couldn't even tune the thing or put it together. I connected with a mentor in town who taught me steel guitar, and he also taught me a lot about the players.
Mm.
And it was so much of it coming back to Paul Franklin, and just the incredible stuff that he has been playing on albums for decades.
Yeah.
His work is incredible. Another steel player I really enjoy is J.D. Manis, Desert Rose Band. Had a lot of the West Coast influence on steel, and trying to learn and transcribe his stuff is always an adventure. He's a very, very unique player, and I just every time I sit down and learn some of his parts, I take a lot away from it. There's a lot to learn from his playing.
You can't beat Tommy White for me. I have vivid memories of listening to vinyl of his, and I mean, still seeing him play on the Opry too. I mean, he's still shredding. He has a sense since he's a teen too. It's crazy.
Yes, yeah, he is an amazing player. And I think that he played with the Time Jumpers recently, and I was disappointed that I didn't get to see that. I'll be checking back to see if he's ever with them again. I'll definitely go see that. He's a great player.
For sure. So what's life been like kind of starting out back on the road for this summer? I saw you guys were at Stagecoach last weekend. You excited to be back on the road this summer?
Definitely, yes. And I just moved back to Nashville about 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
So I had been commuting for 2 years, flying into Nashville, flying back to Richmond, doing all of that. And it is great to be back and be here. And we've been doing these stadium shows with Luke Combs that have been incredible.
Yeah.
His camp is awesome. I mean, everything about it is just a great experience, and Stagecoach was great too. And it's just always, the summer is a fun time to get out and play shows. There's always a good mix of the types of shows we do, whether it's the club stuff or the opening spots in these stadiums.
For sure. Now, as a utility musician, has there ever been a time where like someone texts you before a gig and is like, "I need this instrument," and like you might not know how to play it yet, but like you figure it out like maybe a day in advance or something?
Definitely. So there's actually, I think, for a lot of the instruments that I play, there's a story kind of like that. With the dobro specifically, I never played a dobro. I didn't have one, anything like that, but I've been hired to play this like one-off gig on steel guitar with an artist. I think we were going to go up to Illinois, and it was supposed to be a full band thing. And then the manager texted me, and like a week before, and he was like, "Hey, by the way, this has been changed to acoustic, but no problem. Just bring your dobro, and we'll just do that." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, I'll bring my dobro," and then I went out and bought a dobro, because it's a reasonable transfer, and I think that's with the kind of the balance point of whether or not you say like, "Yeah, I can do that," or just like, "No, I don't think I'm the guy." When it comes to utility stuff, it's whether or not your pre-existing skills can transfer pretty well. Because I mean, like, if you're a guitar player and someone asks if you can play a simple banjo part, yeah, probably, right? If someone asked me if I could, come out and play a trombone solo or something like that, I would definitely pass.
I don't think musicians need much convincing to buy another instrument.
that too. At the time I was living right around the corner from the old Corner Music location. So I was like, all right, great excuse to go in there and see what they have. And found a pretty good dobro and picked it up and played it ever since.
That's awesome. Now, I like to close my interviews by asking, what's a piece of advice you've learned along your journey that you'd give to the aspiring musicians out there?
Sure. For me, one of the biggest things is just like, you have to leave your hometown and you got to go where the music is. And, it sounds like cliche and cheesy, but you have to believe that you can actually do it, and then you got to go and make it happen. And the first part of that is just going to, whether it's LA or Nashville or somewhere else. And once you're there, you have to find what makes you unique, what your marketable skill set is. For me, that was playing steel guitar. Yeah. I first came to Nashville and I really couldn't find any work on guitar. It was just kind of an oversaturated market. There were thousands of incredible guitar players, but not a lot of people playing steel. I started doing steel, and instantly, even when I was just a couple months into the instrument and really wasn't good at it, I was able to get some work right away. So for me, what made me marketable, unique, was playing the steel guitar, and then from there the utility stuff just kind of fell into it. And a big part of this too that I recommend to everyone is just to find a mentor. There are a lot of people here who can be extremely helpful to new musicians, and they want to help. I was fortunate that I had 3 really great mentors here in Nashville, a steel player and 2 guitar players. They, not only helped me learn what I needed to know to be a musician here, but also develop my skills and introduce me to people. Between those 3 individuals, they connected me to so many different people and artists in town. And lastly, I would just say, be open to new experiences. whether it's a different genre that, you're going a little bit outside of your comfort zone, or like we talked about earlier, the different instruments. If you're a guitar player and someone calls you about a utility guitar mandolin gig, before you say no, really think about if you can do it. If it's not some crazy bluegrass mandolin shredding, then there's probably a good chance that you can't. So that would be my main advice to musicians.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment, and check out my music on all streaming platforms at Justin McCormick. See you guys next time.